Concluding discussion. So what do we conclude from all those examples that we have studied about language policy, about how it applies in real life situations, and how we can use localization within computer programming? So what do we conclude from all this evidence? Number one is something about Pakistan's language policy. So there is no written language policy for Pakistan. When we talk about language policy of Pakistan, then we are talking about all those resolutions that have been passed, all those committee reports that have come to us, all those declarations by the government or anything written in the constitution. So we put these all together, all the reforms that come to us, and we say this is the language policy of Pakistan. Well, it might be all right not to have a written language policy, like Britain does not have a written constitution. But the problem at times with a country like us is also that when there is no written language policy, and then whatever the hierarchy of the languages that is set up by the language policy in any way becomes more subtle and difficult to question. So this becomes more clear when we think about the role of Urdu vis-a-vis English. So, and when we think about the role of Urdu versus local languages. So no matter what, there is this hegemony of English language which favors the elite. And when we compare Urdu with the local languages, then there again comes this Urdu that is at a higher status in relation to the provincial languages. And it is interesting to note that even when the constitution gives the right to the provinces to devise their own language policy, then even provincial governments opt for using Urdu instead of local languages in the functionings of the government and in education. And this, let me remind you, this is what we are talking about, a voluntary choice or a voluntary shift, which is not voluntary at all, as the researchers say, because it is because their own language has become a burden for them, because they can't see any openings, they can't see any opportunities for themselves if they learn their own language. So they try to make a shift towards dominant languages. So the article is arguing that in order to save the language, we need to use the language in technology so that we can develop appropriate vocabulary, appropriate script to be of use within technology so the language can actually develop. And we should extend the use of Urdu in technology now to local languages also. This, the author argues, will restore the prestige of the local languages. It will open up the opportunities for those people who do not have access to the dominant languages, but they have access to their own languages. And if you're thinking about literacy skills, and you might say, well, anybody who is literate, that is able to read something, will know some sort of Urdu. And if the person is not literate, then this means the person cannot possibly read. So if the person cannot read, so it does not really help us to give the person information in a local language or English or Urdu. It's all the same. However, let me remind you, there are several options now for read aloud. This option of translating and again reading aloud, that is, the computer reads out the information to you, is very much there. We could utilize that, and we could utilize this for literacy purposes also, as we discussed. This localization will help individual agency and collective agency. There is a difference between agency and well-being. And so to simplify the issue, which is a complex one, well-being is more about how you are or your standard of living. Agency is your ability to do something not just for yourself, but also for others. For instance, if there is a fire and somebody tries to jump in the fire to save somebody else, another human life, then this is not an act of well-being, this is an act of agency. That is, the societies definitely need agentive individuals, and societies need collective agency to develop and progress, because it is about people helping themselves. So if you give them information which is worthwhile, related to them in languages that they understand, then they will be able to help themselves and also others in their community. They will be able to understand the current challenges and support others in a need, as we said. And then, of course, it will help to widen participation and access for everybody. So once you know what is going on, you start to think about your own position within the society, then you also try to participate in the debate that is going on. You start to have a voice. So localization in computer programming is like giving voice to those marginalized people, and it is a big step towards it. And this is what we argued for.